Welcome, everyone. Insight Meditation Community of Charlotte. I'm Clyde, one of your Dharma leaders. Normally at this time, if you don't have your video on, you want to turn it on and let's see who all's here and just wave at everybody. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? A thumbs up somewhere? Can you hear okay? I think my computer's slow or something is going on with it tonight. Thank you. Okay, so tonight we're going to finish up our series on the 7 factors of awakening. These are the 7 qualities of heart and mind that arise from our spiritual practice. If you remember, we started out with mindfulness, which is really the kind of the groundwork for everything. It's a connecting factor, it's a linking factor, it has to be there present, to be mindful to know the other ones are there. Then there were the 3 arousing factors: investigation, energy, and joy. Then we started last week on the calming factors of tranquility. And tonight we're going to finish up with the final 2 calming factors of concentration and equanimity. Now, so concentration, the Pali word is samadhi. And in the sequential development of the awakening factors, the awakening factor of tranquility leads to a happy state of mind, which in turn facilitates concentration. Some of you may remember a month or so ago, I gave a talk about some words that I had problems with in the teachings. Well, had I been more inclusive, concentration would have been one of those, because when I started looking at this, I found that this one had this same concept here, like exactly what it talk about concentration. It has different definitions and meanings and things. So the first thing that I had an issue with was just the word concentration. We're talking about awakening factors, joy, tranquility, mindfulness. And this one just seemed concentration seemed kind of harsh, had to do with this forceful, this concentrated mind. There's a strain, a struggle, a tightness around concentration when I think about concentration. So it didn't feel too good. So I looked a little bit more, and Bhikkhu Analio says, he says that translations that perhaps better convey the nuances of samadhi would be collectedness or composure of the mind. So is the mind collected? Is the mind composed versus just concentrated? So that sounds a little bit more like an awakening factor. Is the mind collected? Is it composed? Calmness is another word. Is the mind calm? The second issue I kind of had with these was like, it had the definition of it. Exactly what are we talking about here? This awakening factor of concentration. Well, so I went back and looked and said, where does it show up? And it first shows up in, we'll go to the Noble Eightfold Path, and you go to the 7th step, and that's right mindfulness. You get into right mindfulness, you look at Satipatthana Sutta, and there's mindfulness of body, feeling, tone, mind, and then these investigation of the dharmas. And one of those are the 7 factors of awakening. And in those instructions there, so they say, and this is for all the awakening factors, the instructions are the same, but it says, one knows the concentration and awakening factors present within me. One knows where it's with me. One knows when it's not present within me. One knows how the unarisen concentration awakening factors arises. And number 4, one knows how the concentration awakening factor is developed. So that knowing, that one knowing goes back to our concept of mindfulness. One knows this is happening. So those are the instructions, but it doesn't tell me what the concentration awakening factor is. So that's the first, when you're reading through, if you're doing the study in the text, that's the first time you see that idea of concentration, or the concentration awakening factor. Then we would go to the next step in the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the last one, and it's right concentration. Well, let's look at that. What does that mean, right concentration? Well, that one's pretty well defined. That, when we talk about right concentration, is when we talk about the jhana states, when you're going into the jhana states. These are these deep absorption states, these concentrated states that they have there. So that's, and it's usually in this suttas, it's the four jhanas. There's more jhanas than that, but they talk about the four jhanas. The first four jhanas being in right concentration. So there was this idea of that, and there's this. So I had to keep looking. What are we talking about here? Is it jhanic states? And it just so happened I had got a new manual, a new book called Manual of Insight by Masaha Sayadaw. And he was a Burmese teacher early in the 20th century. And he explains that there are really three types of concentration. And I've heard of these before. The first one is access concentration. And that's where you contemplate an object of meditation, i.e. our breath, to help block the hindrances and quiet the mind. And all these forms of concentration are ways of purification of the mind, purifying the mind. That means we're trying to get a mind that's no longer disturbed by the hindrances. That's what we're looking at. So there's access concentration. They call it access concentration because it's concentration when the mind gets so quiet and concentrated right before it goes into a jhana, the first jhana. And it's sometimes called neighborhood because it's right before you get to it. Then the second type he describes is absorption concentration. And this is the jhanas, or these mental absorptions that are described in right concentration. There's the four jhanas. And you really do, at that point, you've really blocked out the hindrances. And then the third one, he talks about this moment-to-moment concentration, which focuses more on developing a steadiness of mind in all situations, rather than the aspect of suppression and removal from distraction. So it's this steadiness of mind in all situations, this moment-to-moment concentration. And I remember on retreats, when you go to insight meditation retreats, what we would do would be, we'd spend if it's a 7-day retreat, we spend the first 5 days focusing our breath, focus on the breath, coming back to the breath, quiet, and the mind begins to get quiet. And then on the 6th day, part of the 5th, 6th, and 7th day, we would break away from the breath and begin to open and just be aware. Some people call it open awareness, and because that moment-to-moment concentration, where we're aware of whatever grabs our attention, we concentrate on it, it becomes our object of meditation until it passes away. If it's a sound, we do that. If it's a thought, we do that. If it's a sensation, we do that, and then we come back to our breath. It's that moment-to-moment concentration. So when I went back to this Manual of Insight, I wanted to say, how did he define this awakening factor? The mind focuses on each object as one notes it, sticking to it without wandering off, firmly concentrated on it. This type of concentration enables one to understand the mental and physical phenomena in terms of both their unique characteristics, what's unique to that particular thing that you're focusing on, and their universal characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and impersonality, or non-self. This kind of momentary concentration involved in each and every moment of noting is considered the alignment factor of concentration. So that helped kind of clear it up for me a little bit. This is this moment to moment. And you notice in access concentration and jhanic concentrations, you're pretty much on the couch, and I mean on the couch, on your cushion, and you're in a meditative state. The other one, you can be in a meditative state, but it's this continuous meditation. Because jhana, you go in and you come out of, access, you come in and go out of, where this moment to moment, you can maintain it for a longer period of time. And for me, that's kind of how I work with that. I work with that. We work with the hindrances in this. That's we focus on. I focus on the breath. I work with the hindrances, being them aware, and because all this is about working with the hindrances to help to get a state of concentration. And also this idea of knowing. That's where the mindful knowing. Is my mind concentrated? Is my mind calm? Is my mind collected? Ajahn Theradamo asked Ajahn Chah, who's one of our teachers within the forest tradition, asked him, how much concentration do you need? And Ajahn Chah says, he said, concentration should be developed until the mind was just calm enough. Now, Ajahn Theradama goes on and say, well, enough for what? What do you mean, just enough? He's saying that calm, they use the word calm or concentrated, or this calm mind, is not, he said that it's calm enough for insight to arise. And that's why we're doing this. It's calm enough for insight to arise. Calm and concentration is not an end in itself. Calm is a tool, a foundation, a basis for clear seeing, for insight. Only insight leads to awakening. Concentration alone does not. And then Ajahn Chah does say, though, the deeper the calm, the deeper the insight. So that's concentration. Now let's look at equanimity. Upekkha. And equanimity, we've talked about a lot in here. Debbie gave a month or so gave a talk on equanimity, just equanimity itself. It is considered defined as a balanced state of mind resulting from concentration. Makes sense. It's the next awakening factor. It's been defined as dwelling with inner balance, equal-minded, even-minded, and mental and emotional equilibrium. Equanimity is kind of an advanced quality. It's one that it's the last of these awakening factors. It's in the fourth jhana, something that's focused on in the fourth jhana, the last jhana. It's also the fourth Brahma Vihara, loving kindness, compassion, sympathy, joy, and then equanimity. So it's like the last one. So it's more of a mature state. And so I went back here to see what Mahasa Sadao says. He says, the mind is what equanimity defines it this way. The mind is balanced and equanimous as it notes each subject. This balanced state of mind is called the enlightenment factor of equanimity. He does go on. It is quite difficult to empirically understand this kind of equanimity or to explain it to somebody else. However, one can easily understand it through one's own experience, with the knowledges beginning with the insight knowledge of arising and passing away. So we just kind of have to take that and say, well, that's what is hard to describe. What is this balance, this idea of balance, equal mind. So I looked at this and I said, well, what are some of the things that help contribute to a balanced mind? Well, one thing would be, as we develop these awakening factors, that they all contribute. The culmination of these awakening factors leads to equanimity. But I went out and things like, and these are things that I think help me. It's when we do the investigation, we begin to experience these things ourselves, this rising and passing away of things. This too is going to pass. That gives me a sense of not having to get all flustered about something that's arising and passing away, this idea of impermanence. We begin to see how we create our own suffering. I can see if I start clinging to something that's impermanent and I create suffering for myself and others, I begin to learn to let go. Okay, I can let go of this. I'm clinging to this, I can let go. I can ease my suffering. That gives me a more of a stable state of mind. We see how the hindrances distract the mind and cause us to act in unwholesome ways. We begin to see as we meditate, as we do our practice, that if I act with unwholesome motivations or intentions, I'm going to create more suffering. So I can do something about that. I have some agency there. I begin to experience this law of karma, cause and effect. It's not just left up to something. I can make a difference, and I know "I's" a big term now, but it's this idea of being able to I'm not at the fate of something else. I can have decisions. I have agency here. And knowing that if I act with wholesome intentions and good intentions, that's going to create less suffering. I can act without having to worry about the outcome. What else helps me to be equanimous? As we develop the Brahma Vihara concept of equanimity, we begin to realize that I begin to realize this connectedness that we have with each other. Just like I want to be safe and protected and happy and healthy, I want everyone else to be this way. So I see this connectedness with this interconnectedness with other beings, that I'm not out here alone, I'm with others. We may even experience this idea of this concept of and this impersonality of things, that this when I begin to let go some of this idea of I, me, and mine, and realize that there's this self here, but there's this not a permanent self here, that it's not as impactful. It's like, this is not mine, this is not me. But I could touch into that a little bit. And then the last thing that kind of came up, that I said, that a lot of this gives us a sense of confidence, and this confidence is in our practice, our experiential practice, what I practice when I begin to see these things. It gives me confidence in the teachings when I hear the teachings and then I experience them in my practice myself. It reaffirms the teaching and it becomes a part of me. It gives us ability, it gives us this a place to be grounded. So we're not pushed and pulled. They talk about when we go in to do things, this idea of the 8 winds, the gain and loss, the praise and the blame, the fame and disrepute, the pleasure and pain, that we're not pulled by that so much. We have a balanced state of mind. So those are some of the things that contribute to a balanced state of mind. Jack Kornfield says, equanimity is developed as we learn to keep our heart open through the changing circumstances of our life and practice. Again and again, we are challenged to return to this moment, however painful or pleasant or boring, to let it into our heart, to greet it with balance. Now, when I was doing this, when I was doing this talk tonight, I kept equanimity, and the thing that kept coming up to me was equine horse, came up as a horse. So, and when I was thinking about the horse, I thought about the English riders, the people who do dressage. I'm so impressed because these people are on this big horse, and the horse is walking along. All of a sudden, the horse starts trotting, and the horse starts galloping, and this person is not the rider. You can't see them do anything. I mean, and all of a sudden the horse will stop, and you didn't see the rider do anything. And to me, that was a real good example of this idea of equanimity, that this rider is completely balanced on this horse, this big animal. And it's like us doing our mind. We're taming, we work with our mind, we're kind of taming the mind, and we kind of can ride it through this balance. No matter what it does, we have this, and I don't use the word control so much, but we're balanced. We're there. We're comfortable. We're confident that we know what's going to happen. We know how to control the horse without, you know, how Western riders are pulling and jerking and all this stuff. But with the dressage riders are just so calm and collected on this horse. And I thought, well, that to me is a vision of equanimity. But here's the most important thing I want you to remember about this horse metaphor is that you don't train a horse in all this ways just to sit on it. You train the horse to go somewhere and do something. And that's where I think equanimity sometimes gets a bad rep. It's this mountain, you sit there, you're indifferent, you just sit there and you could be balanced, but you're not doing anything. Equanimity, Jack Kornfield calls equanimity a tremendous power. It allows us to be able to go in and do things, to act with an open heart, with a balanced mind, and not being pulled this way and that. So it's not an indifferent type concept. It allows us, it supports us in our actions. So equanimity, then that's equanimity. That's what we're going to be kind of working toward, this balanced state of mind. And it's kind of the culmination of what we do. So those are the last two. Those are the last two of the calming factors. We have covered the 7 factors. We've covered mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. Jack Kornfield says to embody these factors of enlightenment is to awaken to our fullest inner potential. We can break through the conditioned patterns of the mind and come to know the deepest truth for ourselves. And I want to leave you with why these factors, 7 factors of awakening, are important. The awakening factors, and Thea mentioned this last week, the awakening factors stand in direct opposition to the hindrances of greed and lust, hatred and ill will, restlessness and worry, sloth and torpor, and doubt. So these stand in opposition to those. We develop one and lessen the other ones. According to the Buddha, these 2 aspects, removal of the hindrances and establishment of the awakening factors, are necessary conditions for developing knowledge, insight, and realization. Bhikkhu Analayo writes that according to several Pali discourses, the key aspects and the distinctive features common to the awakening of all Buddhas, past, present, and future, are 1, to overcome the hindrances, 2, to practice satipatthana or mindfulness, and 3, to establish the awakening factors.